www.howdidagethere.com.
Such a cool experience. I've never been on a radio show before.
Oh, it's fun. There we are. Now we're live. Welcome, everyone. It's 6:02 on Monday night. You're listening to the 100th installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour on www.hamiltonradio.net Channel 2. I'm your host, Greg Rapport. I'm the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Age Out Angels provides one-to-one mentors to vulnerable youth for the purpose of coordinating the care and services that they need to survive. We try to help young people avoid some of the horrible pitfalls that they're likely to face if they don't have a proper safety net. And this program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of Doc G, William Saunders, Ruben Rodriguez, and all the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Ja is on the big board tonight. It's also his birthday. You're going to hear more about that later. And Robin is producing. So good to have both of you here. And thank you so much at home for tuning in. We've put together what I hope you will find to be an insightful and compelling view of the child welfare system and related issues that improve our community. So get ready, because tonight on the radio hour, a couple of very interesting people. We have the executive director of an organization called Homeworks, and her name is Natalie Tung. And also back from last week's show, Keith Jackson from I Care of East Windsor and Hightstown. If you saw last week's show, you know that Keith's mic was off for the first 10 minutes. And we laughed because we were just so embarrassed that happened. What else can we do but laugh?
It's not the first time.
But we wanted Keith to come back and give you a fighting chance to hear exactly what it is that his organization does. So stay with us for the whole hour tonight, and I promise you'll be just a little richer for having done so. And stay with Hamilton Radio all night long for a combination of great music and great talk. Immediately after this program, Dr. Felicia Nace is back with her show called The Argument, where she takes a stand on a particular issue and you can call in to agree or disagree. And right after The Argument, Troy Alexander comes in at 9 with an hour of inspiration. So keep it right here at Hamilton Radio all night long for great talk and great music. Now, please take a moment, open a separate browser, and find us on Facebook. Go to my name, Greg Rapport, and hit that share button, or email everyone in your address book. Tell them to go to hamiltonradio.net Channel 2. Please tell everyone in your world what we're talking about tonight, because what you are going to hear here applies to every geographic region, including where you live. What we talk about here needs to be shared. Don't keep this private to yourself. Help us share it. We need you to help us share it. Tell your friends. There's a generation of youth out there being forgotten, and caring people can't sit still while that happens. And while you're doing that, let me remind you that we're here almost every Monday from 6 to 7 with the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. Next week, 10:21, we plunge head first into our next 100 shows with a fabulous guest and a topic that you're going to be hearing a lot about in the weeks and months to come. Next week also starts a series of pre-recorded shows. So my guest next week is a lady named Pat Stanislavski, and she's an expert on the topic of resilience. For example, did you ever notice that two children can come from the same dysfunctional household and emerge with totally opposite outcomes? Like one is a successful corporate executive and the other one is incarcerated. And you wonder, like, how is that even possible? And it turns out that there's research on the topic of resilience that goes back to the 60s, and Pat is able to apply context and clinical research to that question with astounding results. If you take an hour and listen to the show next week, what you will learn about genetics will have you running straight to your doctor for a particular genetic test because you're going to want to know if it's you. And I'm not going to reveal that to you now. You have to tune in next week to find out. So be sure to tune in every Monday at 6 p.m. for our unfiltered look at the child welfare system and other related community services. This is where you come to get the whole truth, and I promise what you will hear tonight cannot be found on the nightly news. And since we're live, you can write to us during the show in the comments field on Facebook or call in if you like. The number is 609-807-2492. You can be part of the show. You can join right in on the conversation and help us celebrate show number 100. I want to say hi first to Keith Jackson. And I thought about this all week, but Keith Jackson was a Philadelphia Eagle, right?
That's true.
Right, but that's not you, right?
No, I was the broadcaster.
Okay.
Whoa, Nelly!
Keith Jackson was a great player,
Yeah.
if I recall. You remember?
Yes,
you
he
know
was.
what I'm talking
Tight
about.
end, yeah.
That's right. He was a tight end. So Keith is president of I Care of East Windsor and Hightstown.
That's correct.
Right, and this is a very sort of localized organization.
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell us, how this started and who it is that you serve?
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, I Care is really the result of tragedy in the community, actually death of young people. In a very short period of time, our community experienced several suicides and as well as a few overdoses. These are kids that are from our community. We grew up with, we coached them, they slept over our house. And then to watch what happens to them and their family was very, very disturbing. My son actually approached me after he buried his second friend from an overdose in a period of 6 months. And asked Dad, somebody's got to do something, more has to be done. And simultaneously, there were other folks in the community who were, aware of and experiencing these tragedies themselves.
Feeling the same way. Yeah.
There was an attorney, David Coates, who was a lifetime Hightstown resident that made a couple phone calls and asked if, we could get together in his living room and have a conversation, right? Just to explore what, if anything, can we do to try to make a difference and make a change? And we had several living room conversations and discussions, and we had some ideas that we needed to fill some gaps in the community. More needed to be done. But before we executed on anything, we decided, hey, you know what? We really need feedback from the community. So we had 2 community town hall meetings that were attended by over 200 people in the community. In a small community like Hightstown, East Windsor, that's quite a number. And we asked the community, what did they think? What really could benefit us most? And the overwhelming response was that we needed more services, but they needed to be accessible and they needed to be free of charge because a lot of people didn't have insurance and they didn't have access to counseling services. So that became our mission. After that, we went out and started to talk with the county officials, Department of Human Services, Mercer County, as well as the local mayor, and really anybody who would listen that could help. And we told them that, hey, we need to get some services. We have to do something. And the end result of a lot of those conversations was that we were able to get a grant and bring in a service provider who could start providing services at a facility, the YMCA in Hightstown, 2 nights a week for a couple hours. It was immediately a wait list developed, and we said, hey, we had to do more. And during that time, that original provider went out of business, so we went back to the drawing board. We were able to get another grant from the county, and simultaneously, our group, I Care, was starting to get some structure around it. And what we did is we incorporated. We're a 501c3. We are completely volunteer, and we have 15 board members that are all made up from the community. We acquired a facility so that we could provide service delivery in there. And then on the county side, they provided the funds, which allowed us to get a professional provider, which is Jewish Family Children's Services. They are actually providing the service contracted through the county in our facility in Hightstown. And currently, we have hours from 2 to 7, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. It is free of charge by appointment. You don't need insurance. We are seeing mostly children, kids, probably 4th, 5th grade through high school, on a wide range of mental health issues as well as substance abuse. So we feel really good about what we've been able to bring into the community. There is already another wait list, so there's an overwhelming need for these kinds of services. iCare as an organization facilitates that, and we're trying to make sure it's in place for the long term. But we're also expanding our own programming, and we've started to develop additional programs such as peer grief counseling for kids who have lost friends. They can get together and share and talk with each other. We have a parent support network for parents who have kids who are struggling and dealing with a lot of issues so that they can talk together. And we're also providing yoga free of charge for high school age kids so that they have an alternative, sort of a mindfulness approach to issues that may be causing a disruption. So we're really trying to create awareness. We're trying to raise funds because we are a volunteer nonprofit, and we want to keep the lights on, and we want to reach as many people as we can. We want to make a difference.
The thing that just absolutely amazes me about this, and that I want to make sure we make a deep impression on the people who are listening to this program, is that this is just a flat-out grassroots effort. People in the community who had, who just sort of knew each other, like to varying degrees of friendship or acquaintanceship, suddenly, rallying around a common problem and creating an organization. That's what grassroots is, and you've sort of managed to do that. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I think the motivation of the catalyst is a desire to make a difference. None of us are PhDs or psychotherapists or licensed clinicians or psychiatrists. We're just people who are passionate about what's happening in the world and trying to make a difference. You can't wave a wand and make it all go away. So the question then becomes, well, what can you do? And I found that as long as you have the desire to do something and you start reaching out and talking to enough people, the knowledge will come. As well as the support. Because while you're sitting in your living room saying, boy, I wish somebody could do something, I guarantee there's 30 people on your block who are sitting there saying the same thing, right? Well, it's magic when you guys all come into the same room and say, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Right, what can we do?
Right. I think about that a lot sometimes when I have a creative thought. I go, okay, I'm not the only person who's ever had this thought. There has to be 10 million other people. Where are they? How can I reach out to them? Well, you've done a wonderful, wonderful job. Tell everyone your website in case they want to make a donation.
Oh, absolutely. iCare of EWH.org.
Okay, and iCare is the letter I, and then CARE, right?
Correct.
And then it's of EWH. East Windsor Heightstown,
right,
EWH.
EWH.org.
Yeah. Hey, if you're out there, throw them a few bucks, huh?
Yeah, we greatly appreciate it.
It's not going to kill you. And then start your own organization where you are, and then Keith will send you a few dollars down the road.
Absolutely.
I'm pledging on your behalf.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a short break. Please hit that share button on Facebook. When we come back, Ja's birthday and Natalie Tung from Homeworks. A lot of show left to give, so don't go away. All right. Where's the cake?
from heaven. Demons flying from hell. Start playing songs on an old jukebox. First one up. Are you ready to rock? Get ready. Ready to rock. Get ready. Ready to rock. Demons coming alive from an old oak tree. Wednesday, it's by the fire. A white witch howls at the yellow moon. Crimson codes get hotter and higher. Angels come down from heaven. Demons flying from hell. Start playing songs on an old jukebox. First one up. Are you ready to rock? Get ready.
No, not really.
Okay. And so, people don't know you, I guess, who watch my show. You have a show every week, don't you?
Yep.
What's your show called?
The Monk Show every
The-
Friday.
The Monk Show, Friday at what time?
MUNK. 10 to 12.
10 to 12 p.m.
Yep.
I'm asleep by then.
Yeah, well, it's for the. I'm a late night type of guy. You know, I don't sleep, so I do all the late night hour stuff.
Monk is a fabulous keyboard player. People don't know this who are listening to my show. How long have you been playing keys?
Since I was 7.
Since you were 7 years old? Yeah, that's a long time, and it shows. It shows you're a good player. So, what do you say, guys? Little happy birthday?
Uh-oh.
Loud and clear. Here we go.
Happy birthday to you.
Thanks so much.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ja. Happy birthday to you.
I made it to 45. I don't look it. Don't be telling nobody.
You made it to
Yeah,
45.
try to stay looking young.
Rob, would you like to take the cake out and maybe cut some pieces and give some to the people who are listening at home? Too.
All right, thanks, Greg.
Because thank you, buddy.
All right.
Always a pleasure. Ja's also doing double duty engineering the show tonight, and he's one of the station owners. So support him when his band is out there playing. Keith, are you going to take off now? Is that
Yeah, I
Okay.
do. I have another engagement, but congratulations on your 100th episode.
Thank you so
And
much.
thank you so much for having me. I
You
really
bet.
appreciate it.
You bet. I'm so glad you could come back, and there's food and cake as you head
I'll
to
pack
yoga.
a bag on my way out. Thank you.
Bye. Good
Bye,
luck with
Keith.
the
It was
organization.
nice
Keep in
meeting you.
touch. All right. So now I share the spotlight with only one person, Natalie Tung from Homeworks. I have to be honest. I know a zillion nonprofits. I had no idea that your company existed until we happened to meet at a trade show.
Yep.
What was it like? The Capital County Children's Collaborative or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was-
CCCCCCC.
Yeah, it was about like a month ago, 2 months
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here.
Oh, you bet. You bet. There you are out of the blue with this really cool program. So the organization is called Homeworks,
Yes, it is.
right?
Yes.
And how long has Homeworks been in existence?
Yeah, so I think now it's been in existence for around 4 years now.
Really?
So
Me
we.
too. I mean, Age Out Angels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I wasn't making a
Oh,
sarcastic joke
oh,
about
wow.
my age.
Okay.
I mean, Age Out Angels.
Oh, 100 episodes, 4 years. Wow. Wow, really cool. So we started out around the same time.
Yes. Yeah, that's what
yeah.
I'm saying. And didn't bump into each other till 4 years later.
Yeah.
That shows you how fragmented the nonprofit.
Is very true.
Industry
We
is.
are also very, very new, and should I say, kind of talk about like how it started and everything?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So so this started out 4 years ago. So I guess backtrack a little bit more. I am originally from Hong Kong, born and raised. Was really lucky to have had access to really awesome education systems and schools, but also I think kind of specifically like when I was a little bit younger. I don't know if you know much about the Hong Kong education system.
The education system, no. The current politics, yeah.
And that we can save for another
Okay.
time. But
All right.
but I so when I was younger, we used to kind of sit in rows where the teachers would lecture at us, and we were expected to memorize pretty much everything and then go through testing. And I think because of that, I had very low confidence and didn't have the best relationship with learning. And so I was really, really lucky that when I was 14, I had the privilege and the opportunity to attend a boarding school here in New Jersey called the Lawrenceville School.
Okay.
And
Great school, by the way.
it's an amazing school.
Love their golf course.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Lawrenceville, it's a boarding school where you pretty much it's an amazing education, and then you also live in the dorms from people all over the world.
Right.
And that changed my life for two reasons. The first was the wraparound learning, so the fact that we were not only learning in the classroom, but really because we were living with our classmates, our teachers, we were also learning outside the classroom, and everything that we were studying was being reinforced outside. And then it kind of extended beyond to conversations about, about ethical things or politics or, our emotions. And I think, thank you for the cake.
Here comes our cake.
But I think second, and probably more importantly, we were split up into groups of 40 into dorms, and I ended up living with these 40 amazing young women who really changed me as a person. They made me more confident, more empathetic, and just taught me that like when women come together, so many amazing things can happen when we're all on the same team, and they just made me realize like how supported I felt and how powerful I am as a woman when I'm backed by so many other amazing women. And so kind of, I'm young. I won't say my age on radio, but when I ended up going to college, I had this dream of, when I'm 60 or 70 or, 50 years old, I will start my own boarding school for kids who might not have the same, who might not be able to access
This was
something
your
like this.
dream?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, I've always wanted to be a teacher. I've always been really
I had
interested
no
in
idea. I thought you
education.
got a job. It's a
No.
good one. No, this
Yeah.
was your dream. Okay, so
So
continue.
yeah, and so when I was a sophomore in college, I took this entrepreneurship class and taught me that it was possible that I could actually do something now. And so what ended up happening was I started talking to a lot of people in the community, so specifically in Trenton, and just really fell in love with the community and just learned like how amazing, and welcoming the people were and are, and then talked to a bunch of business leaders and educators, and through that started to think about, okay, maybe a boarding school isn't the best the best idea right now, given I was so young and I wasn't going to start a school right away. But then I think
Where did you go to college?
Princeton University.
At Princeton. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you were local.
Yes,
That whole
very,
time.
very local.
Okay.
I've been in here. I've been in the area for a while now.
All right. So people told you just graduated college. A full-scale boarding school might be a little overly ambitious.
Yes, and I was a sophomore then
Oh,
too.
okay.
So definitely they were like,
Okay.
you should maybe think about this a little bit.
Let's scale it back to be manageable.
Yeah, but then the more research I did, the more I realized like what was the best part of boarding school for me. And for me, as much as the academics were great, it really was the after school part where I was living with, my awesome friends and teachers, and it was really that extended school day that really I really appreciated. And so then I was thinking, okay, what if we partnered with the local public schools, but then did that whole other boarding part afterwards? And the more people I talked to, the more I realized actually that was probably not only more feasible, but way scalable and way more cost efficient. So Homeworks, it's an after school boarding program for middle and high school girls, where our girls go to their public schools during the day, but come stay overnight to receive after school programming specifically focused on academics, life skills, civic engagement, and female empowerment. And then they stay in our dorm at night from Sunday nights to Friday mornings. And so the other, I think, unique part about Homeworks is that not only are we replicating the benefits of the boarding school without the bureaucracy and the scalability and high fixed cost issues of an actual school, but we're also keeping our kids within the community and really reversing the narrative that they have to leave their community like Trenton to be successful, because that's not true. And Trenton is such an amazing, beautiful place and lots of strengths and lots of resources that, we really want to tap into.
That's an amazing story. So, did you have to then take this idea and like present it to the Trenton Board of Education, because they have your bureaucracy there?
So
that's like quicksand.
Yeah. So we did not. So what I ended up doing was I ended up, getting a student teaching certificate with Trenton Central High School. So I really, it was amazing to be with the students, to be with the parents and the teachers, and to learn, what are the strengths and needs of the public school itself. And then
that gave you access.
It did give me a lot of access, and then also talk to a bunch of community leaders and parents and students outside of that as well. And then we're now, a nonprofit. So we're 501c3, and we are licensed as a youth camp.
Amazing. Just absolutely amazing. I'm going to just give Natalie a second to eat her cake and take a breath. What a great story. Back with more of your story in just a minute, but thought it might be nice to kind of go back over what we learned throughout the course of 99 previous programs in the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. And it's some pretty sick stuff, actually, that we've been privileged to bring your way. We learned that children are removed from their biological households due to abuse or neglect or both. We learned that frequently that abuse or neglect results in devastating consequences, especially when it comes to the biological development of youth. When this abuse and neglect or both takes the form of what we call complex childhood trauma. Complex childhood trauma is where one or more traumatic events is repeated over and over and over and over without the child ever having a chance to heal. Complex childhood trauma frequently manifests in what we generally consider to be antisocial behavior in teenagers. It results in children who are hypervigilant, always on guard for the next traumatic moment. We learn that trauma can be especially devastating when it happens to children between the ages of 0 and 3. I mean, if you could just remotely wrap your head around the concept of a child who is an infant being sexually molested, it just boggles the mind. And these years are incredibly formative, those 0 to 3 years. And if children aren't given the opportunity to form correctly, well, then there are often actual physiological changes that impair cognition and affect them for life. Later in life, they have trouble sleeping. They have unexplainable health problems. They're prone to outbursts. They can't control their affect. Have trouble in school, have trouble learning, or just drop out entirely. And some people will say that what I just described is pretty much every moody teenager they've ever met. And they'd be correct, except when they're not correct, because they're unaware that a much more sinister dynamic exists in a particular child's life if they've been subjected to complex childhood trauma. And we learn that by studying what are called adverse childhood experiences, there's actually a certain element of predictability in who will suffer long-term consequences and who won't. And if you're Googling things at home and you Google adverse childhood experiences, the acronym is ACE. They call them ACEs. And take the ACEs test yourself. Have you ever taken the ACEs test? Oh, you got to do it. You got to take the ACEs test. If you score 4 or above, it explains a lot. You know, a lot of you may be prone to various. It's not a guarantee. You understand, but you may be prone to various things like addiction and
Interesting.
you know, stuff like that. Yeah. So, I mean, can you imagine what it would be like to live in a house where there's domestic violence, like where you never know if you're about to witness your mother getting a beating, and of course your mother's supposedly the person who's caregiving for you, right? So that person who's caregiving for you is the one who's getting beat up, and you would feel absolutely helpless to come to her aid unless you want to take that beating for yourself. If you want to get in the middle of that, that's a kind of complex trauma that we're talking about here. And of course, you know, we've also learned that if you grow up in a family of color, you have a much greater chance of being removed from your home than if you come from a white suburban family. You have a greater chance of being arrested, and if you live in an urban area, your life expectancy is about 10 years less than those who grow up in more affluent white suburbs. We also learned that the only thing worse than a child living in an abusive household is to be removed from the only home they've ever known, thus compounding the trauma. Now, of course, I'm not advocating that a child remain in an abusive household, but it's equally important to understand that by doing the right thing and removing them into what we hope will be a better circumstance, we are actually compounding the trauma in that regard. We also learned that trauma can be compounded further when the child is a part of the LGBTQ plus population. This is a population that represents the highest suicide rate among teens. And it just boggles my mind because so many LGBTQ plus kids come from basically middle class homes, come out in their teenage years, and then they find out that they're not welcome home. So they're put out on the street and they have absolutely no street skills. And they're just prey. I mean, so often they are just pure prey out on the street. So all these things brew together in a cocktail of adverse childhood experiences and leave youth more prone to things like drug use, risky behaviors, overreacting to the smallest stimuli, being unable to control their affect, and the cognitive impairments that limit their ability to be successful in school. So, you know, where does that child whose self-esteem is diminishing by the hour, go to have success? And it's a very, very difficult question. Then we learned about, what tends to happen to foster kids when they age out of the system. There really is a thing called the foster care to prison pipeline. Even though I got to say here in New Jersey, I've met some pretty special caseworkers. I got to be honest with you. You know, when you hear about the Department of Children and Families when a kid dies, and that's always a tragedy. And I don't mean to downplay that, but the fact of the matter is that what they call them DCPNP caseworkers here in New Jersey, some of them are really pretty amazing. And the ones that I meet frequently are fighting like at the last minute as a youth is aging out of the system. And would be left to their own devices. The caseworker is out there trying to find agencies like mine and other care management organizations to take that child on after they age out of the foster care system to help them, because the world is just a tough place and it's too easy to spiral downward at some point. And frankly, that's the reason Age Out Angels exists, because that's the situation. Eventually, children have to leave the foster care system, and when they do, leaving without supports can be a horrible thing, and their outcomes show it. I have to tell you, though, the scariest part, the part that was the scariest about the last 99 shows, was learning about the Mount Laurel doctrine. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Yeah, people haven't. People just don't know about this stuff, right? What can I do to get this on Rachel Maddow, huh? We cannot get this information out there unless you guys share it. I hope you're all hitting that share button right now. The Mount Laurel doctrine was in response to redlining and other techniques that were used to incentivize white flight to the suburbs. Mire the lower income class into the urban part of the city, where basically three things happen. Businesses left, taking their jobs with them. Tax ratables decreased, which affected negatively the schools and the police department and all the public services. And social services took up shop in the urban areas where the businesses used to be. So if you happen to be a person in need, you would actually be advised to go to the urban area because that's where the services are. You see? So it concentrates the population of people who need all into this area where there's basically nothing but a bunch of nonprofits because the tax dollars aren't there for proper social services. And you find that anywhere. Go anywhere in the country. It's not just Trenton, it's everywhere. Go to St. Louis, it's go to Washington, D.C. It's the very same thing that caused these things to happen. And if you just had to put it in one phrase, it's just the new Jim Crow. That's what it is. With the highest per capita rate of incarceration in the country, the population of color is a long way away from digging out of that hole. And what happens is the slumlords get richer in the urban center because they charge top dollar to the government for rundown apartments. The land developers in the suburbs get rich, and it all happens at the expense of the existing population in the urban area. In a word, it sucks. And I have a lot more to say about it in my final words tonight. But that's the only negative that we learned in 99 shows. Did I say the only negative? That was about 5 minutes worth of negative there. The positive is the amazing services that are offered by the 150 plus guests who have appeared on this program. Not to mention the ones here tonight, Keith Jackson, who had to leave, and of course, Natalie Tung, who's sitting next to me. If you want to call in and say hi, the number is 609-807-2492. I notice Tammy Ray Patero is out there listening. Janet Schilling, Debbie Epstein-Warshaw, Sandy Adler-Taub, Michael Merlino, Jerry Schaefer. So good to hear from all of you. Jeff Anderson, Matt Carides, Gene Antonelli, J.L. Payaso Watkins. Jay, I'd never know how to say that part. Melvin Ford, Kathy Hamilton. So good to have you all listening to the program. So, Natalie, your Homeworks. Is Homeworks like a house?
Yeah, so right now we have a house. So when we first started 4 years ago, we had a house with 5 scholars in 2017, and then we doubled that number to 10 scholars in 2018, and those were both summer programs. And now we have a house of 11 scholars and 2 staff, and we're doing it for an entire semester.
And how do you select the people? I'll bet there's a longer list of requests than you can accommodate.
That's a great question. Yeah, so far over the past few years, we've had to accept less than half of the people who applied, and then this year we and what our kind of procedure is that so we first go out to back to school events and to different schools to advertise what our program is, and then separately we work with counselors at schools to also ask them for referrals based on students who they think would be a great fit for our program. And then what we end up doing is have both our parents and their and the students fill out a written application and then an interview as well. And then they come to our open house and see our program and see our house, and then it goes from there. But
now, when you have the open house, are there kids at that who are ultimately not going to be selected?
Yes,
So they
unfortunately.
know they're sitting next to a competitor.
Yes. So we are definitely we want to promote a high performance culture, and so unfortunately we want to take every scholar because they're all amazing, but we only do have spots usually for 10. This year we made an exception for 11 just because our house could accommodate that. But yeah, this year we had around 60 something people who had expressed interest, and then we ended up taking 11 scholars.
11 out of 60. About the same odds as getting into Princeton. And so So they go to their regular school during the day.
They do.
All right. So they.
So
get
we have a
school
bus.
You have a bus.
So we have a bus that transports them from our house to school, and then from school back to our house every day.
I see. And they get back from school 3, 4 in the afternoon.
Yep, around 3:30, and then they have our block 1 is homework period, so they go do their homework. If they don't have homework, we have no phone policy at that time, so they either can take a nap or hang out with other scholars or read. And then block 2, we have tutoring. So this block is where we're very we tried to be as intentional as we could with our academics, and so we went actually to survey a lot of the Trenton school teachers at their school that they were going to attend, just to see what were the gaps and the needs that they wanted us to do. And so based on that, we built a very culturally responsive curriculum, both in English and in math. And that's what they do every single day from Monday through Thursday. And then the block 3 at night is focused on our pillars, which is life skills and female empowerment. So those are workshops on everything from right now we're working with 2 amazing people, both educators. The first is she's a professor, urban education professor at Towson University. Dr. Marcy, and she teaches life skills, but specifically keeping in mind, that our population is predominantly African American and Latinx. So, we do everything from like what is colorism or body image or self-esteem workshops. And then Miss SP, she is right now a fellow at the Lawrenceville School, and she is teaching exploring identity through the arts. So like exploring that through dance and art, zine making, I think is what it's called, and poetry. And then our last block is community engagement. So we have that every Wednesday. And that is basically, we really want our scholars to be community leaders. So we go to different nonprofits every single week to learn about what they do, and just to have a deeper understanding of the community, so they can be leaders.
Wow.
So.
And so then there is time to sleep?
Yes, they go to bed around 9:45 every night. So yeah, we do keep them very, very busy, and kind of keep them on a tight schedule. But it really is to also establish a routine, so that the hope is that they have this routine, they get their homework done, they have after school activities, and then also get to hang out with their friends.
But they're teenagers.
They are.
Teenagers, try defiance out the same way they try on, a new piece of clothing. It's just something new to try, see if it takes hold.
Yeah. Our scholars are amazing. They have really bought into our program and have really just amazing to see like how they already have bought, even on the 3rd day of our program. This is our 6th week of our semester long program, but even on the 3rd day, just seeing them, how they've bonded, and they had their self-esteem workshop on the 3rd day, sorry. And I was in a meeting with the staff, and then I walk out and everyone was, like really being vulnerable and holding each other and like supporting, and they ended up, just, I don't want to, talk too much about it because it is more personal, but it's just, it was incredible to see how much they gelled and how much they continue supporting each other inside and outside of school.
It's really pretty neat. And because I wanted to talk for a minute about female empowerment, because women are known to beat the crap out of each other. I mean, they really are. Women are so hard on themselves, on themselves and on each other. I used to tell a joke that if a woman is staring in the mirror too long, run screaming, because she will find something wrong with herself. She will find a flaw. And so do you change them in that regard? Because I'll bet you money when they come to you, they have that competitive tendency.
Yeah. It's interesting because yesterday I was just reading something from I believe it's the Dove Self-Esteem fund, I think, that 7 in 10 girls are not happy with who they are, and
Yeah.
so
Not surprised. It should be 9 out of 10, I would think.
yeah, and I would say that in this world where we are still, there's still very little space for women to be at the top. That I think,
That's right.
I think that's probably the reason that then in order to be at the top, they feel like, or we feel like we have to tear each other down or judge each other,
Yeah.
judge ourselves. And so, yeah, so I think really like what we're trying to do is kind of reverse that narrative and to actually really have that idea. And I mean, I've experienced that myself, that when you are really supporting each other, you find strength in each other and in yourself. And Michelle Obama is one of my biggest role models.
Right.
And just, I don't know if you read her book, Becoming.
I did not, but I get the picture.
I think something that really struck me was, first of all, like how vulnerable she was, but also second of all, like how she mentioned, time after time throughout all those pages, like how her female friends, role models were the reason why she finds so much strength in that. And that I think is really special and really rare to kind of foster. And so that's what we're trying to do through all these activities and these workshops.
Yeah, well, it helps if you're brilliant and go to law school too. That like doesn't hurt. See, it's funny how, this is my total belief, is that it's the job of the nonprofits to pick up where the child welfare system, leaves off, and you clearly have your cohort of people that you're doing that job with, and that's pretty neat. Personally, I go after the C students myself, because I feel like the C students get just so ignored, because they're not causing any trouble. They don't raise their hand in class because, God forbid, the teacher should know who they are.
Yeah.
They're just happy. They go through life.
Yeah.
They get those C's, and lots of times they could do so much better. But it's safer
Yeah.
to not put yourself out. I love those kids.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I really go after and try to create various after-school tutoring programs and stuff like that to show them that you could be a little bit more. And I just think it's fascinating, the dichotomy,
Yeah.
because you come from the background you do, and I come from the background that I do, and sort of who we've chosen to adopt.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Yeah, I would say in terms of our population of kids, they're all really amazing in terms of their where they're at, like socially, academically, everything. It's really a wide variety. So in terms of when we recruit, we're not looking, we look at the holistic kind of, and we accept anyone who have different grades, and it really is about their willingness to be engaged in the community and to grow and to really want to grow themselves and grow each other. So we really do have a range of kids.
What, are you going to send them all off to college though? Is it all about higher education in the long run?
I think as we expand, so right now we're doing a semester program, and then what we hope to do is to have them for all 4 years. So we would have 10 freshmen each year, and we would have a dorm full of 40 young women, all working together to build each other up and build their community up. And that ideally is, yes, we'll try to make sure that everyone is on the path that they want to be, and to go do whatever their heart desires.
It just hit me, but I'll have to look this. Do you know Joshua Meekins?
I do.
'Cause
Give Back Foundation.
Yeah, Give
Yes.
Back, right.
Mhm.
I mean, I can totally
awesome.
see you guys partnering, though.
So we actually have been in conversation, and he has talked about how he wants to have some of our kids through the
Yeah.
foundation. So that's something that, thank you for the reminder, because I have to reconnect with him.
Because then Give Back then pays for their college.
Yeah, and so I met with him, I think, last year, and then I met with someone else at Give Back a few years ago. And so we do want to partner. Joshua, if you're out there, I'll be reaching out to you soon.
Oh, Joshua, if you're listening, I have one I need to get graduate school paid for. Is there any way you could help me out with that? So that's wonderful. We are going to take a short break, be back in a couple of minutes with my final words and a little bit more with Natalie Tung from Homeworks. Still time to share this. My final words are actually going to be amazing. Don't go away. Good job.
side through our website as well.
Dream is coming alive from an old tree. Witness dance by the fire.
And we are back. Before we go further, I do need to thank all the people who made donations to Age Out Angels this week. We thank you so much for your generosity. If you have an employee giving fund or matching gifts foundation associated with your place of work, we would certainly appreciate your contacting us and telling us how we can participate in that. Private message me on Facebook or email to greg@ageoutangels.org. And I want to remind everyone that you can donate to Age Out Angels every time you make a purchase from Amazon or even Homeworks, right? Well, we could share. It's all
We
right.
could
You know,
share,
there's
yeah.
there's enough for everyone to go around. And I want to remind, so you can, every time you make a purchase from Amazon, all you have to do is designate Age Out Angels to be your Amazon Smile designee, and a portion of your payment will go to Age Out Angels without it costing you 1 penny more. I can make it easy for you to designate Age Out Angels as your Amazon Smile recipient. All you have to do is contact me either via Facebook or greg@ageoutangels.org, and I can send you a link that will take you directly to our designation. Can you do that as well?
I will.
Because you don't want to make people sift through 850,000 names, you know, to find your organization.
Yep.
If you just joined me, my guest is Natalie Tung, Executive Director. Are you the founder also?
I am the
Yeah,
founder,
you founded the
yes.
organization, didn't you?
Yes.
Wow. Of Homeworks, an organization where children go to school during the day at their regular school and then board at night with you, right? So the parents are okay with this.
They are. So I recognize that it isn't for everyone, just like boarding schools aren't
Yeah,
for every
right,
family, for
yeah.
every kid or every parent. But they do. What's awesome is that they are only with us from Sunday nights to Friday mornings. And so actually every Sunday nights we have potlucks with the families, which is my favorite part of the program because
okay.
all of our families come together. You know, it depends. Like sometimes it's, a mom who comes, or it's like all 7 siblings and everyone comes and it's a big party. And it really is awesome seeing the families get to know each other and become friends as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. So I was saying earlier that as I look back over our first 99 programs, there's some topics that stand out as constants. And I mentioned them earlier in the show. There's all the trauma and that goes with growing up in an environment where you're abused or neglected. And honestly, 99% of the problems have poverty at their core. And poverty is a huge issue, but that's not the point of this segment. If you think about it, it's just more than a little disappointing that very little progress has been made on these topics. For example, what has really been done to bring an end to poverty since our first show was on? You can't think of too much, like little Band-Aids, but not a real strategy. The income gap is expanding. It's not contracting. And is there talk. Talk. There's tons of meetings. I could go to 4 meetings a week. But does anything actually ever happen? Meanwhile, we begin to accept this public relations spin as though it were a fact. For example, we all seem to agree that in order for change to happen, it must begin with a dialogue. You hear everybody say that. You could turn on television any hour of the day, pick a topic, and someone will say, well, we need to start talking about this. We need to open a dialogue, and we talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And the reason so many of us feel helpless is because all the talk falls on deaf ears. It amazed me how 2,000 children at our southern border who were clearly mistreated managed to capture the attention of the media and the nation, while 430,000 foster kids, 3.5 million homeless kids, can't get traction on the nightly news. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people just don't give a damn. They may have their own problems or their own agendas. And you want to know something? The fact is, I believe that they are otherwise good people, who I could easily be friends with. But when it comes to empathizing with real people in challenging situations, they just choose to turn a blind eye. And I got to tell you, I chat this stuff up everywhere I go because I want to see people's reactions. I want to take the pulse of the public. So the other day I'm in line and the clerk was talking about how if you've been convicted of a crime, you can't vote. And I said, well, that's a shame. And the person behind the counter had no sympathy at all. She said, well, then you shouldn't have gone to jail in the first place, should you? And she said it like with such conviction, like she knew exactly what she was talking about. And I got to tell you, in her world, that's absolutely correct. But she's not aware of the issues that over millions of children have to deal with in this country. She has no idea what it feels like to be arrested while being black. The news or the social media she's exposed to simply doesn't tell her. This is like the best kept secret in the world. And the problem is it lacks a leader. There's no one central galvanizing force that holds rallies and petitions Congress and forms an agri-mob with pitchforks that stands around the Capitol. There's no one who makes this into a juicy news story so that they'll get noticed. And it makes me wonder if any real progress will be made in the next 100 shows. And it also makes me wonder if the new Family First Prevention Act will make a dent in some of the treatment of children, because if you're aware of the Family First Prevention Act, you know that they're moving dollars away from the foster care system, which was money thrown at the situation after the child is removed. And they're taking billions of dollars and throwing that money at families before the kid enters the child welfare system, to try to stop that from happening, to try to keep families together, to try to help parents be better parents. And the only thing I can promise you for sure is that we'll continue to do our part here at the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another hour talking about youth who should matter more in our political and economic discourse than we do. And we thank you so much for tuning in and maybe helping us spread the word. Again, we offer humble thanks to Hamilton Radio and to my most excellent guest, Keith Jackson, who had to leave early, unfortunately, and Natalie Tung. Natalie, people can apply to Homeworks by going on your website, right?
Yep.
Do you want to tell your web address?
It's homeworkstrenton.org. So HOMEWORKSTRENTON.org.
Homeworkstrenton.org. You can go there. You can make a little donation. Throw them a few bucks. It won't kill you.
We'd really appreciate that.
And maybe one day you'll start a school just like that in your area, and then Natalie will
Yep,
give you some
absolutely.
money. And so let's make a date to meet right back here next week, October 21st. It will be our 101st show, featuring Pat Stanislavski and a discussion of the topic of resilience. Please put that in your calendars right now. Thanks to our engineer, Ja, to our producer, Rob, and music provided by Angel Fire. Our webmaster is Carmen Garcia Valera, and our social media specialist is Bailey Braverman. Until next week, let's make this week the best week ever. Have a great evening. Good night, everyone.